This module has been created to help you understand what academic integrity is and why it matters. So in terms of a definition, basically people who are upholding the academic integrity are engaging in honest and responsible acts. The idea here is that you're creating academic products that go above and beyond what prior folks have already contributed to the field. Meanwhile, you are also giving proper credit to others who may have shaped or influenced your current work in any way. So what is cheating? Well, cheating is really any kind of activity that would give either you or another student an unfair advantage. Here are some examples, either giving or receiving test or homework answers. Now, the most obvious form of cheating is obviously copying from another student, but that's not the only way that you can engage in cheating. Even talking to another student about a test that they have not yet taken is also considered cheating. So let's say you just took a biology test and you knew that there was going to be a lot of questions about the brain and how the brain works. Well, if you're talking to other students who haven't yet taken that exam and even tell them generally, make sure you study the brain, that technically is cheating. Another type of cheating is when you work collaboratively on an assignment, which means you work with another student or maybe even more than one other student to complete the assignment when the professor is expecting you to complete it by yourself independently. Another form of cheating is when you're using unauthorized materials on a test. You know, obviously the most common is the cheat sheet or the crib notes. So using anything that you're not allowed to use during a test situation is also considered cheating. Now let's take a look at plagiarism, the other major type of academically dishonest behaviors that students can engage in. What is plagiarism? It's basically when you're presenting someone else's work as your own. It's like stealing intellectual property. Remember, the goal of an assignment or learning task is for you to create a product, not for you to share someone else's product that's already been created. So here are some different types of plagiarism. You know, probably the most classic type is the cut and paste method. This is where you put your name on the work that someone else created. It could be that you took an entire paper from someone else or sections of that paper. Perhaps you either took that from someone else who did another paper for college, or maybe you took it off of the internet. It doesn't really matter where it came from. The idea here is that you took the work of someone else, inserted it into your paper, and put your name on that academic product, in fact, when it was not your work. Another problem that you run into often is when students don't paraphrase correctly. So sometimes people think it's okay to just change a few words in a sentence and then you can just kind of claim it as your own. Well, that's not really true. You're really just taking their, kind of spirit of the sentence, changing a couple small words, and that's not changing a whole lot. So you can't really just do that. That still would be considered plagiarism. Another issue comes into play when there are citation problems. Whenever you're using the direct words of someone else, even if it's only a few words, you need to use quotation marks. That will tell the reader of your paper that these are not your words, but actually the words of another person. You clearly also have to provide the citation so we know whose words they were and where you got that information from. And finally, even if you paraphrase, you must cite the source. So it's really essential. I think a lot of times students fall into this trap. They think that if they took the idea, changed the wording around, put it into their own words, then it's okay to not cite it. And that is not true. You need to cite everything that comes from someone else. Why does this matter anyway? Well, we really need to think about what it is that you're doing in college and what your ultimate goals are. Now, clearly, I'm sure many of you want to get good grades and be able to maybe get into graduate programs or get the job that you're looking for. So I fully recognize that you have concrete goals, but hopefully you're also in it for the learning, because the whole point of why the college degree is required for different jobs is because employers are expecting you to walk in with a knowledge base, with a skill set. So what I'm hoping that you're able to focus on is really how important that learning process is. Having a good GPA without having the knowledge or skills to really adequately or even above adequately perform a job is not going to really help you in the long run. So it's really essential that you're focused on your learning. As you can see here, being ethical is really important in all aspects of life, but employers are particularly looking for, for their employees to have a strong ethical foundation, to really be honest and responsible and make good decisions. And it builds character. I mean, think about it. Who do you want to be? Do you want to be known as someone who cheats, a cheater, or would you rather be known as a person who kind of stands on his or her own, and others can really know and trust what you have to say? I mean, personally, I think it's really important to be an honest, ethical person, and that matters a lot more than anyone's GPA. Consequences. If you do engage in cheating behaviors or any kind of dishonesty on campus, there are significant violations that can happen. You'll want to go ahead and read the entire code of conduct, which can be found in the college catalog. Here you'll see what kinds of penalties can be, attached to many of these, different kinds of dishonest behaviors. They can range from having either a 0 on an assignment, an F in a course, to even getting suspended. And in many cases, it can also prevent you from moving forward, especially if you're in a field that truly values academic integrity. So for instance, if you're in the health profession, you're probably going to get dismissed from programs if you're not engaging in honest behavior. We don't want our nurses, our doctors, et cetera, out there getting through programs through cheating. We want to make sure that they are adequately equipped to be able to handle the responsibilities given to them once they graduate and are engaged in those careers. So it's really important for you to know that the consequences can be pretty significant when it comes to academic dishonesty. How do you avoid cheating? Let's take a look at some strategies that you can use. Obviously, you need to make a commitment to being an ethical person, an honest person, but you also need to learn about academic integrity. Not everyone fully knows that all of these different elements we talked about comprise, the overall umbrella of cheating. Clearly, everyone knows it's not okay to look at someone else's paper, but maybe you didn't realize that it wasn't okay to work with another student on a project. Or maybe you didn't know it wasn't all right to share some general information about a test. So knowing what is and isn't okay is a good first step. But the second step is that you want to be familiar with both the college policies and your professor expectations. You need to know and read all of the policies because you're expected to be engaged in behaviors that are consistent with them. So you can check out the college catalog to find out more about the policies related to academic integrity. In terms of your professor expectations, the syllabus is a great place to go. Perhaps you don't know whether you're allowed to work with another student or not on a project. Well, go and look to see what the syllabus says. If your questions are not answered there, then you want to reach out to your faculty member for clarification to make sure that you're engaging in behaviors that are consistent with his or her expectations. As we mentioned earlier, you want to focus on learning and you want to really prepare well for your learning tasks. So you want to be kind of targeting as, what kind of knowledge and skills do you want to get out of this course? How can you engage in different activities to help you get there? And preparing well is going to really make it a little bit easier for you, because if you are walking into a test situation feeling like you really studied well, prepared, you feel knowledgeable, you're going to be less tempted to engage in dishonest behaviors. So it really sets you up well for just promoting academic integrity on campus. So in addition to you being ethical and honest, you want to also encourage others around you. I mean, a lot of times there's like this unspoken rule that it's okay to cheat, or, everybody's doing it. Well, that's not really okay. And it's important for every member of the entire campus to really be upholding academic integrity. You need to think about any course that you're taking, any institution you're a part of. Don't you want that institution, that course, to have a good reputation? You don't want it to have a reputation where, everybody's cheating there, it's a dishonest crowd. Then all of a sudden your degree, your learning experiences have been devalued in some way. So we all have to make a commitment to being kind of promoters of academic integrity. Another way to avoid cheating is to really know what is expected. As I mentioned before, looking at the syllabus is a great strategy. So you can see there's a sample of a first page of a syllabus on the left-hand side. Focus on what is the point of the learning task. Why is your professor asking you to create this PowerPoint presentation, to write this paper, to take this test? If you can connect it to what the learning goals are, that's going to help you know what is expected of you. Again, you'll find out information about what is and is not acceptable. I mean, can you work with others? Can you use materials when you're taking a quiz? Are you allowed to have any, kind of brief cheat sheets, which wouldn't be cheat sheets, obviously, if your professor said you could have them. So you need to really just know what is and is not okay. Is it an open book? Is it a closed book test? Who am I allowed to use as a resource for help? Can I go to the tutors but not my friends, etc.? As we said before, this point I really can't overemphasize is focusing on learning. Anytime that you are cheating, you're really robbing yourself of being prepared for what lies ahead. So even if you do land the job of your dreams and you get, you're lucky to get right into the career path of your interest, it's going to not feel so good if you're not feeling ready, prepared, knowledgeable enough, and really well equipped to handle the job tasks associated with that position. So you want to make sure that you're in it for the long run and that you're going to set yourself up for success in terms of long term, not just in terms of a quick good grade. Planning well can also reduce the pressure. So if you are trying to study for a test last minute and you're not well prepared, again, you're going to be more likely to fall victim and fall into the trap of cheating. If you practice good time management, you study a little bit every day. Actually, a great strategy is to pretend you're getting tested on any material you learn that day, the next day, because then you're not bombarded and overwhelmed with a ton of information at once. Any assignments that you have, you want to break them up into manageable, kind of pieces. So if you have a 20-page research paper, you're not going to sit down and do that at one sitting. At least you're not going to do so in a great, productive way. Instead, break it up. I'm going to pick a topic. I'm going to identify some resources. I'm going to, read this resource, take notes on it. And of course, you're always able to reach out to professionals on campus, whether it's your professor, tutors, librarians, to make sure you're on the right track, help you move along with your assignments and learning tasks so that you're not trying to do something at the last minute. And that will help you also stay on the right track. As we said before, encouraging others to uphold academic integrity is really important. You want to surround yourself with people who are honest and ethical and doing the right thing. Values and character really do matter. They matter now and they matter in the future. When you think about things that you can take away, well, you can't take things like knowledge, skills, integrity away from someone. They're really kind of core to who you are, and I think it's really essential that we focus on that and how important it is. And again, at the end of the day, people are going to judge you more on who you are as a person rather than what grade you got on a particular assignment. Avoiding plagiarism. Well, again, you're going to start off with looking at what is the point of the task. And in all cases, you are expected to create some type of academic product. So I highly doubt a professor is going to ask you to, go and locate another work completed by somebody else and submit that as your own. Rather, they want to hear what your take is on it. In college, you are not just spitting back information, but you're taking and using information in a productive way. So you'll be using resources, you'll be learning information, but then you're taking that to create some kind of academic product. So you want to look to see, what is it that I'm supposed to be accomplishing by engaging in this activity? Then you're going to plan ahead. Make sure you map out what you're going to do when, and you give yourself enough time to complete the entire task. The next strategy is to practice paraphrasing. As I mentioned before, a lot of students really struggle with this, and I'm going to tell you one really great technique is to actually take notes with your resources closed. So let's say you just read a chapter in a book or a section of a chapter. If you're just taking notes while the book is open, you are going to be much more likely to be copying things down word for word. Instead, if you're processing the information, if you read it, you close the book, you process that information, and then you write down what you walked away with, chances are that's going to look like a more a more accurate picture of what paraphrasing looks like. Keeping track of your resources is really important. So we'll talk about that a little bit more in a moment as you go along, because if you're trying to find your sources at the end, it's extremely time consuming and chances are you're going to miss something. Another tip is to learn how to cite sources. So you want to make sure you familiarize yourself with either APA or MLA or whichever format your professor is interested in you using for citation purposes. And of course, it's a great idea to review your work before submitting it. All right, so again, as we talked before about the learning goal of the assignment, remember this is all about you. Your name is going to be on this product, so you need to figure out what are you supposed to be learning and how can other information, works by other people, contribute to you creating a product that meets the expectations of your professor. Paraphrasing. Try to avoid using too many words or ideas of another person. Sometimes when students aren't too comfortable with the material, they end up quoting quite a bit. And we don't really want to over-rely on quotes. I mean, if you do use them, of course, you're going to use quotation marks and include a citation. But even if you do that, your professor doesn't want to see an endless stream of quotes of other people and what they said and contributed. Again, remember that goal was for you to make your own contributions. As I mentioned before, if you take notes with the source in front of you, that's going to lead to plagiarism at a higher level than if you close the source and then write it down. Again, the reason being is that you're really focusing on learning the material, processing it, and then capturing it in your own ideas. Here is an example. This was taken directly by a module put together by Dupre, and actually many of the ideas from this module come from the work of Dupre. So you saw that noted out obviously on the front page. So here again is a sentence, and it gives you two different, unacceptable and an acceptable version of what acceptable paraphrasing would look like. Generally speaking, you don't want to paraphrase a sentence so much. You really want to paraphrase ideas. So you don't have to worry about paraphrasing a particular sentence. You want to go and look at the concept, and then when you're taking that concept and integrating it into your paper using your own words, that's considered paraphrasing. So here's the keeping track of citations slide, where we really want to zoom in on the importance of this issue. First of all, if you do this, you will make your life a lot easier when it comes time to create the reference page at the end of the essay. And keeping this system will also help keep you honest so that you remember which idea you got from which source. So if you're using more of the old-fashioned kind of handwritten notes, like let's say you're using index cards or something, whenever you're writing information on one side, you always want to document, and a great way is to just put it on the other side, which book, which journal, which internet site did you get that from? Write down the entire source because it'll be harder to go back later to find it. So if you have the entire citation, you're much better off. If you're using the computer, then you can just make a notation of the source somewhere on the page. You might put it right there while you're typing it so it's clearly connected. There are some great resources like on the library website when you're in the journal databases that you can actually export the citation. So there's some great tools out there that you can use to help you grab that information, just copy that and paste that into your works cited list. It is okay to copy and paste a citation. You do want to double check to make sure that it was accurately cited using whichever format that you used. And the reason that that's okay is because you're not really taking anything except for the source itself. All right, so why is it that we need to cite sources anyway? Well, obviously the main reason is that it shows the reader where that information or where that idea came from. It gives credit to the author of that idea. In addition, it also gives the reader enough information so that he or she can go back to that original source. Maybe they're reading your paper and they get kind of excited or interested, or maybe they're critical about something that you just, incorporated into your product. Well, it gives the reader an opportunity to go back and look at the original work and, dive deeper into the content. All right, so what is it that we need to cite? Well, you always need to cite someone else's words or their work, and obviously you'll use quotation marks if it's direct words. You also need to cite anything that you paraphrase. So any idea that is not purely your own idea needs to have a citation. There are only two reasons you do not need to include a citation. One is it is your idea and your idea alone, and the second is it's common knowledge. Now, this can be questionable. What is and what isn't common knowledge? I mean, who the President of the United States is, I would hope, would be considered common knowledge. So, there's some things that you can kind of just assume most people would know that without having to look it up in some kind of resource. But there are other topics that it's going to be a little trickier. Is this common knowledge, or did I really learn it because I read about it? I'm not really sure. And just because you know something doesn't mean that everyone else knows something. How do you know that? Is it something that happened or transpired in a class or when you were reading? So if you're doubtful about whether or not it's common knowledge, just err on the side of caution and go ahead and cite it. No harm done by oversighting. Now, when do we need to cite sources? Well, it's pretty obvious that students are able to recognize that they need to cite sources in any kind of paper. Again, anytime you're using the work of another person, you need to cite it. But papers are not the only place where this happens. You also need to cite sources in presentations or any other works that you create. So anytime you're taking and using someone else's idea to create some type of product, you need to give that person credit. It's really important that you do so. And you need to do so in a variety of ways. So like in papers, for instance, you are going to include them on the reference page, but that's not enough in and of itself. You need to tell readers which piece of the paper came from which source, and that's why you'll need to use in-text citations. All right, so let's take a moment to talk about the different citation styles. The two most commonly used styles are APA, which is the American Psychological Association style, and MLA, which is the Modern Languages Association. Their styles are a bit different, so you need to see which style your professor wants you to use. And below you'll see, at the bottom of this screen, you'll see examples that are in-text citations. This is not the entire citation for a reference page. But generally speaking, when you're using APA style, you're going to put the author's last name and the year that the publication was published. MLA, on the other hand, has the author last name and the page number. Now, the page number will be included in APA if it's a direct quote. So as I said before, this is paraphrased information, not direct quote. What you'll need to do is familiarize yourself with the different styles and make sure you're following the right protocols. You can click on these different links here and they will bring you to some very, very helpful websites that will help you both with MLA, APA, and then also some general citation assistance as well at the bottom. You want to use your resources to make sure that you're accurately citing, because the more you know about citations, the better off you're going to be, and the less likely it'll be that you end up unintentionally plagiarizing. So you'll need to take some time. I'm sure you'll learn about these in some of your classes, but if you are not taught this explicitly, you can go ahead and take it upon yourself to become an expert. All right, let's take a minute now to talk about how reviewing your work can really help. Once you're done with a paper, if you go back and you look at every idea, every sentence, you need to go and say, okay, was that purely my own? Was that common knowledge? If not, do I have a citation? And that will help make sure that you've really done a very good job. So this reviewing process is good. It's also important to make sure that all of your citations match up. So if you provided an in-text citation, you'll want to make sure that you also have that citation listed on your reference page. Great to double check your work before handing it in. So I hope that you found this tutorial to be helpful. Here are some additional resources that you can go to if you'd like to read a little bit more about this topic of academic integrity. Best wishes as you go and learn quite a bit and promote an environment of academic integrity.